Today's chapter explores how Prince William and Prince Harry, though raised under the same roof, grew into men shaped by vastly different expectations, pressures, and personalities. As heirs to two different kinds of royal futures, one fixed, one free, their bond was forged by loyalty, but fractured by fate. This is Chapter 10 of Tina Brown's The Palace Papers, The Prince's Next Door. Around the ages of 4 and 6, the two brothers seemed to absorb their appointed destinies. It's as if nurture kicked in over nature and they traded personality traits. Duty and responsibility were drilled into the heir to the throne, subduing his boisterousness, while Harry became the skinny, exuberant imp of misrule. I think this early pivot is so revealing. William was channeled into a mold, reshaped to carry legacy. Harry, meanwhile, inherited the space to misbehave. And Diana's wry, "You take care of the heir, I'll take care of the spare," wasn't just a joke, it was strategy. A former staffer of Diana's told me that the 8-year-old William, on a plane ride back from his first formal trip to Wales, reached over with his fork and speared a hard-boiled egg from the staffer's plate. It was as if the boy had said, "I'm going to be king. You're not, and I'm going to have what I like off your plate. What are you going to do about that?" When Diana scolded him, the staffer said, William went into a right strop, little short of a temper tantrum. So I feel this anecdote about the egg is more than just bratty behavior. It shows how deeply William internalized the hierarchy. Even as a child, his role was already shaping his sense of entitlement. The monarchy trains its heirs early and harshly. A rampant insecurity dictated that Diana always needed to be first in her boys' hearts. They got used to people they loved suddenly disappearing or falling out of favor. On William's first day of preschool, Nanny Barnes, Baba as he called her, simply vanished. He had been used to toddling into her bed in the morning for a snuggle before going to wake up his mother. 24 years later, the chivalrous William showed the depth of his feeling when he not only invited Barnes to his wedding to Kate Middleton, but also gave her a prime seat in Westminster Abbey. You know, this is one of the most difficult scenes to read. I think it captures how Diana's emotional wounds shaped her parenting. Intensely loving, yes, but also controlling and jealous. Her fear of being displaced bled into the boy's attachments. By his early teens, he was his mother's most trusted confidant. She used to describe him as my little wise old man. He was so sensible that he put the rest of us to shame, Simone Simmons, Diana's psychic pal, recalls. He was never an ordinary teenager and always sounded much older than his years. That was due in no small part to the way Diana was so forthright with him. It was a pity she didn't listen more to his advice. Like many women whose relationships with their husbands have become dysfunctional, Diana used her elder son as both a stand-in and a buffer, toting him along for meetings with journalists. My God. There's something sad about this reversal, William becoming the adult in the room. I think Diana needed emotional support and found it in her son, but at a cost. The line between mother and friend was too thin, and William was forced to grow up fast. As adolescents, they became adept at faking ordinariness, slouching around in their cool and contemporary off-duty outfits and speaking in the pseudo-Essex accents that were in fashion. The camouflage couldn't disguise, let alone change, the fact that their mother was the most famous woman in the world. Their royal protection officers were billeted on the same hall. The boys would always be plagued by the bifurcated perspective of two competing realities, profound specialness on the one hand, and, on the other, strenuous efforts to seem just like everyone else. This line says it all. Their lives were curated performances of normal. They weren't living an illusion. They were trapped in a paradox. Especially for William, the burden of maintaining appearances became a form of quiet suffocation. I understand these are really, really privileged kids, princes literally, but they were still kids and my heart goes out to them. The Queen, sensitized by the struggles with her younger sister, always had a particular soft spot for Harry. The whole family from his earliest age could sense the fragility behind his roistering personality. The affection that Her Majesty has for Harry is not a figment of the media's imagination, a former advisor told me. It is real. She's incredibly fond of him, and so is his father, who was always deeply anxious about how he was doing. It's touching to see Harry's vulnerability acknowledged here. I think his mischief masked something fragile. The Queen's affection wasn't protocol, it was personal. Perhaps she recognized the emotional risks of being the spare all too well. It's heartbreaking to see how things have turned out today, despite all this love and concern so many people had for him growing up. I want them to have an understanding of people's emotions, people's insecurities, people's distress, and people's hopes and dreams, she said. The exposure to grim addiction shelters and harrowing AIDS wards made a deep impression on the boys, even if they were driven home by a chauffeur. Sleeping rough, sofa surfing, not having basic comforts a lot of us take for granted. That really struck me at a young age, bearing in mind the gulf for me growing up in a palace, William said in 2015. The experience impressed both boys enough for William to pick up the patronage of Centerpoint, a charity that supports homeless young adults, and for Harry to carry the torch for her AIDS work with the founding of Centabale. For all her instability, Diana gave her son something the monarchy rarely provides: empathy. That's the real legacy she passed on, one that shaped both William and Harry, even as they grew into men walking divergent paths. In this chapter, Tina Brown shows us how William and Harry were never just royal brothers. They were emotional co-survivors, two boys trying to navigate a palace that was both home and trap, bound by love, pulled apart by role, and the shadow of Diana, brilliant, volatile, unforgettable, never left their side. If this resonated with you, join me next time as we explore Chapter 11 of the Palace Papers.